Feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of being a single parent? You are not alone. Welcome to Single Parent Reset, the podcast that helps you navigate the ups and downs of single parenthood and find the balance that you deserve. Whether you're a single parent, co-parent or solo parent, this is the show for you. I'm Orla and I'm a life coach for single parents and a single parent myself. I know how hard it can be, but I believe every single parent has the strength to create a life that they are proud of. For more information about me and the work that I do, please visit my website solascoaching.com. That is SOLAS coaching.com. In each episode of this podcast, we'll be shining a light on the unique struggles single parents face and cover the aspects of being a single parent that are often overlooked and left unspoken. I'll be sharing actionable steps to help you overcome these challenges and find more calm and fulfillment in your life. Single Parent Reset is your weekly opportunity to gain a fresh perspective, take back control, and feel more in charge of your journey. Before I get started with this week's episode, I just want to say a huge thank you. The feedback has been incredible for last week's episode with Roisin O'Donnell, the author of Nesting. It was such an enjoyable experience for me to get to speak to Roisin about her experience as a single parent, but also all about her book Nesting. If you haven't listened, go back and have a listen. Highly recommend it. Also, as always, please, can you, wherever you're listening to this, go and rate, review and subscribe, because honestly, it really helps. And I know everyone always says this, but it actually helps with this podcast and for it to get a wider reach to help more single parents. So please go ahead and do that. Moving on to this week's episode, I want to know, are you constantly running from one thing to the next, trying to keep all the balls in the air, but still feeling like nothing is ever really getting done? That feeling of constant overwhelm is incredibly common for single parents. In today's episode, we're going to look at how we can make life just a little bit easier for ourselves, because when it feels like the whole world is on your shoulders, it's hard to pause, breathe, and think about what actually might ease the pressure. That's exactly what we'll spend the next few minutes doing, identifying small ways to bring more order to the chaos and a bit more calm to your everyday. As single parents, we carry a lot. We're often running on autopilot, juggling work, school runs, the food shop, bedtime routines, keeping the whole show on the road. It can feel like we're sprinting on a hamster wheel with no pause button. But what if there are ways to make life easier and we're just not taking them? You might be so deep into the day-to-day demands of solo parenting that you haven't had a chance to step back and reassess how you're doing things. Or maybe you do know what would make things easier, but you've been holding on to beliefs or habits that are keeping you stuck in the harder way. And here's what I want you to know. We are allowed to make our lives easier. Whether it's the practical pressures of running a household alone or the emotional weight of loneliness and co-parenting, you deserve the ease. In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through 3 steps to help you do just that. Step 1 will be identifying your stress points. Step 2, exploring what would make them easier. And step 3, unpacking the thoughts that might be getting in the way of taking action. Let's stop glorifying struggle and doing everything on our own and start building calmer and more manageable days, one step at a time. The idea for this episode actually came to me 2 weeks ago when I was recording a previous episode that was all about the essential shifts you need to make to find more peace within your co-parenting relationship. And if you haven't listened to the episodes, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging there wondering, what on earth is this shift? I need to know this shift. And the shift is learning what is in and out of your control and putting your time and focus and energy in what you can control. I know this sounds simple, but in practice, they can be a lot harder, especially when your kids are involved and emotions can be heightened. So if you haven't listened, definitely go back and check that episode out. Back to today though. In that episode, I shared a story about how my son started watching TV on the weekend mornings at his dad's, something that I was not a fan of as I did not want my son starting the day with TV. However, as I knew what my son does at my dad's house was out of my control, I knew I couldn't stop my son doing this. But what was in my control was to pose the question to his dad why he started allowing my son to watch TV, as we have good lines of communication open. So when the time was appropriate, I asked his dad what was with this last weekend trend, and he told me that since starting school, my son had started waking up earlier the weekend, which was true. And rather than having to start the weekend a whole hour earlier, he found it better for my son to get downtime for an hour after a busy week at school, while his dad had an extra hour to himself before launching into the weekend together. Of course, at first I defaulted back to my own thoughts of, that's not what I want for a son, that is not how the day should be starting, and frankly, it's just lazy parenting, and I didn't want to hear any of what his dad had to say. But then I challenged myself to re-examine, why was I so hell-bent on not having my son watch TV in the morning, and what would happen if I did allow him have this hour of watching TV in the morning? I realised that I'd believed for some reason that watching TV in the morning was just not in line with my idea of what a perfect parent was. But then also, I looked at how I'd been coping with these earlier starts of the weekend. And let's just say, by the end of the weekend, I was most certainly not being the perfect parent I wanted to be. And if I did let my son watch TV for an hour, how amazing would that actually be? I would have a whole hour to myself to do whatever I wanted, and the weekend solo with my son wouldn't be started far too early. I realised this was 100% the way forward for our weekend mornings. Needless to say, my son was delighted, and I found the weekends so much more manageable with just that one extra hour to myself in the mornings. By holding strong onto my idea of what perfect parenting is, and not thinking I was deserving of this time to myself, when it was, after all, my weekend with my son, and I only get to have him every other weekend. So I was thinking I had to be all in with him from the minute he woke up. By believing these things, I was just making life a lot harder for myself, and there, in fact, was a much easier and better route to my weekend. And now I always look at what I'm doing and ask myself, is there any way this could be easier? And if there is, but I'm hesitant to it, I examine what belief is behind this hesitancy and work on breaking that down so that I can enjoy the easier option guilt-free and, more importantly, stress-free. The first step in this, finding an easier way as a single parent, is identify your stress points. Start by pinpointing when you're feeling most overwhelmed. When does it feel like everything is falling apart, like you're moments away from burnout? Everyone's daily life looks different, so your stress points will be unique. For you, it might be the frantic rush to the shops after work, racing against the clock to get dinner sorted before school pickup. Or maybe it's trying to get all your kids on the bus for yet another birthday party, or feeling guilty because you're giving the birthday present weeks late. Not because you forgot, but because you literally had no time. And that's just the practical stuff. Then there are the emotional stressors, those moments that quietly weigh on you, like the dread of handover day, followed by the emptiness when the kids are gone, or the anxiety of walking into an event full of perfect nuclear families, feeling like you don't quite fit. Whatever your stress points are, be it practical or emotional, I want you to know that it's okay. You might feel like you're the only one struggling with these things, but I promise you, you're not. If your list is a mile long, that's okay too. The first and most important step is to recognise what's weighing you down. And from there, we can start making life just a little bit easier. Moving on to step 2, how to actually make things easier. What I want you to do is pick one point and ask yourself, how can I make this easier for me? And don't worry about the excuses that will instantly make you not allow yourself to make this easier for yourself. We will get to those in the next step. For now, I just want you to ask yourself, how could I make this easier for myself? Get creative, even if they feel indulgent or too easy. I'm going to run through some examples from my own life to give you an idea of what I mean here. So one example is, I'm actually going camping with a group of friends soon, and I don't drive, and there's not going to be space in any of the other cars because they'll be full up with the other families. So initially, I was thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to buy a tent and the chairs and all the food and lug it on the train, and it's just going to be an absolute disaster. And then I thought, Okay, how could I actually make this easier? I looked up the campsite. There are pre-pitched tents. Yes, they're more expensive, but I don't own a tent, so I'm saving money there by not having to buy a tent. And also, the families don't know this that I'm going with, but in no way am I carrying all my food and drink with me on the train. I will be depositing my luggage into each of their boots so that I don't need to carry everything. And these are all ways I can make this weekend that could have been an absolute oh my God, I would have actually had to build the tent as well. That just popped into my head. No, this weekend I am making a lot more easier. It's going to be challenging enough taking me and just my son camping with a whole group of nuclear families who have more support. So let's make this as easy as possible. And that's what I'm going to do. Another thing that I've done in the past to make my life easier is when I was working 3 days in the office, I found it impossible to get dinner sorted in time or even get to the shops. So what I did was I started using those meal boxes like Mindful Chef or HelloFresh. There's loads of different ones, and you can get discounts when you sign up as well, so you can get them even cheaper. But I started to use these and I found it so much easier when I would come home and I didn't have to think. There was a box there with the recipes and all the exact ingredients right there ready for me to make food. I was then making sure I was eating well, and also I was not stressing trying to get to the shops. It made my life easier. Another thing that I've really hacked into lately is playdate swaps. If your kids are old enough, I cannot recommend this enough. Start swapping out playdates with other parents. And for me, what actually held me back here was because I'm a co-parent, I don't have my son every other weekend. So I would feel guilty for not spending the whole weekend with them. But now, if I can send him off for 2 hours during the weekend, he has more fun because he's with his friends, and I get to catch up on making a nice dinner for us later or doing things for me, and I'm a much better parent. Another thing I do, I fly quite regularly back and forth to Dublin because I live in London and my parents are in Dublin, and I like to go and visit them with my son. However, when my son was younger, having to stand in a queue in a very busy airport was not ideal. So I would pay extra to have the fast track so that we did not have to queue. And yes, this can seem like an absolute decadent extra add-on when flights are already expensive, but for me, it was worth every single penny when we did not have to queue and I could see hour-long queues beside us. It was something that, yes, I had to maybe forego something else somewhere else, but it was worth it and it made my life easier. And they're just some of the practical things I do to just make my life easier. An example of something I've done to help the emotional side of things easier is when it's my son's birthday, I sometimes ask a friend to come along with me so that I don't have to deal with the whole birthday party myself, and I've got someone there to support me throughout the whole day, which can just bring up a whole host of emotions. And I could easily not ask that friend and battle my way through and say it's okay, but it's not okay. I find the day hard and I ask someone to come and be that support for me, and it makes it easier. So I think you get the idea. Look at what's challenging and are there any ways you can make it easier? Hopefully you can now see some options for you to start making your trickier times that bit easier. So we've identified your stress points, come up with a way or even ways to make it easier. Now let's move on to the next step, which is the part most people do not bother with, as it takes some work, but I promise you, it is so worth it and it benefits everyone in the long run. And that is overcoming your barriers to making things easier. I'm pretty sure that for most of you, the minute you came up with the ideas of how you can make life easier for yourself, almost instantly another voice cropped up in your head with a list of reasons of why you absolutely cannot do that. Common objections can be jumping immediately to comparing yourself to others and saying, but that's not how others do it. Remember, you have no idea what other families' situation is actually like. It may look ideal from the outside, but you don't know what's going on the inside. Forget about what they are doing. Focus on you and your family, because only you know what it's like living in your family, and therefore only you know what is best for you and your family. Another one is the idea of the perfect parent, whatever that means to you, and telling yourself you couldn't possibly do that because it is not aligned to what you think a good parent would do. Now, if you're really struggling with this idea of perfect parenting and being a perfect parent, I've done a whole episode about this, and I highly recommend you go back and listen to this episode. Or another barrier could be that your way to make things easier could involve asking for help, and that is the last thing you want to do as you've been hyper independent for so long. Remember, you are not a burden, and it is okay and a sign of strength to ask for help. You deserve the help. Another argument that could be blocking you is saying that, well, I've always done it this way. I can't change now. Just because you've always done it this way doesn't mean it is the right way, especially if you are clinging on to a way that you did things when you were with your child's parent. It's okay to move and change how things are done when you separate. Yes, it can be harder, as it can feel like a step further away from your old life and a step deeper into this new one that you may not have fully accepted yet. But you're allowed to make adjustments to better suit your life as it is now. What will people think? This can be a big one for lots of us, but really, what will people think? Who honestly knows what they will think? We are not in their heads, and they are not the ones who are dealing with what we are dealing with. So in the words of Mel Robbins, let them. Let them think whatever they want to think, because that really is something you cannot control. So do not let your actions be dictated by what you are assuming other people may or may not think. Another common thought that might come up for you is thinking, I could not possibly indulge myself like that. I don't deserve it. Again, we are so busy putting everyone else first, and at times perhaps even overcompensating for how our life has turned out, not as we had expected, and therefore believing you couldn't possibly indulge yourself in a shortcut. But I'm telling you now, you most certainly do deserve it, and indulge yourself all you want to make your life easier. You have enough to do as it is, and if you can make it in any way easier, remember, you deserve to make that adjustment. So there's comparing yourself to others, thinking that this isn't in line with your idea of perfect parents, thinking that you don't want to be having to ask people for help, or thinking, I've always done it this way, I can't change now, or worst of all, worrying about what other people think. These are just some of the different things that can come up. And what I want you to know is this is normal. You are used to doing things a certain way, and to suddenly try and change this can be a challenge, especially when it may go against some of your long-held beliefs. What I want you to do is challenge whatever comes up for you as an argument for not taking that step to make things easier. And you can do this by asking the following questions. Is this belief actually helping me? Where did this come from? You could ask yourself, for example, who told me that rest means laziness? Or who said asking for help was a weakness? And do I still want to believe that? And then also you can ask yourself, is this true? And then ask yourself again, is this really true? It can be too easy to allow our beliefs and narratives that we have long held run the show, even when they just do not serve us anymore. By challenging these, you can start to move forward into a life that is more in line with what you and your family truly need. Now, I'm not saying this is an overnight fix. Some beliefs may take time to overcome, and that's okay. What is important is to remind yourself that you're allowed to let go of and change beliefs. You are in charge of how you run your life, no one else. Some bonus tips here to help you in this journey of making things easier for you is to start small. You do not need to make sudden grand shifts to how you do things. This is more about looking at your day-to-day and seeing what tweaks you can make here and there to make things more manageable and give yourself some breathing room. If you try something and it doesn't work, do not be disheartened. This can be about trial and error. What matters is that you're focusing on what is going to make your life easier for you. And if something doesn't work, that's okay. Relook at what went wrong and try another way. Finally, once you start putting this into practice, recognize and celebrate those small moments where you have taken the step to make things easier. The more you appreciate the benefits of making these changes, the more you will be encouraged of keeping up the practice of asking yourself, what could make it easier? Challenging any hesitation that comes up and taking action. So there you have it, 3 steps to making life just that little bit easier as a single parent. Step 1 was about identifying your pain points, both the practical and the emotional. Step 2, focus on finding ways to ease the pain points, even just a little. And finally, step 3, the most important in my eyes, is about overcoming the mental blocks or pushback that can stop you from putting those changes into action. These steps aren't about fixing everything overnight, but about giving yourself permission to do things differently and to make your life work better for you. What is one change you're going to make this week to make your life just that little bit easier? Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Single Parent Reset. You have taken 15 minutes out of your day to do something for you, and that alone is a step in the right direction towards living a life you deserve. In next week's episode, we're going to be talking all about finding you again. A lot of single parents feel that they've lost themselves in the journey to single parenthood, and we're going to look at how you can reconnect with you and start being you again. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, please go to my website solacecoaching.com for further details. And don't forget to follow my Instagram page @solacecoaching for more insightful content on living a life to be proud of as a single parent. As always, if you find this episode useful, please share with your friends and family. Remember, many single parents may seem like they have it all together, but this could be exactly what they need to help them move forward today.